Hi, I'm Itakume and welcome back to another video, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing an anime which I'm sure has touched many hearts, Your Lie in April, also known as Shigatsu wa Kimi no Uso. But before I get into this review, I just want to say that there will be spoilers in this video, so if you haven't seen Your Lie in April, I recommend you go watch it and then come back. But now onto the review. So, Your Lie in April was one of my first ever anime, and my first and favourite music anime out of the few that I've seen, including Given, Carol and Tuesday, and Forest of Piano. I've actually seen it 3 times in fact, first time in dub, then in sub, and then again in sub with my mum. But I'm not going to get into that whole dub versus sub battle because personally I don't think it's necessary and I loved both versions equally. So Your Lie in April started airing in 2014 and ran for a full 22 episodes. It tells the story of a boy called Kosei Arima who as a child was a piano prodigy taught by his mother to play the music exactly as it is on the score, which made him very well known in the classical music world, but it also gave him the reputation of an emotionless robot. However, after the traumatic death of his mother, Kosei is no longer able to play the piano. His mother's death affected him so psychologically that he can't even hear the notes anymore, though the rest of his hearing is fine. And this leads to him abandoning piano and music almost altogether. Now in his final year of middle school and not having touched the piano at all in 2 years, he's living his life in routine in a world that he views himself as monochrome with his 2 friends, Tsubaki and Watari. That is until Tsubaki introduces him to the girl that would change his life forever, Kaori Miyazono. Kaori is a bubbly, energetic and carefree classical violinist. Although introduced at first as Watari's love interest, she takes a particular liking to Kosei, despite his supporting role as friend A. Kaori manages to force Kosei back to the piano in a way different from the way that his mum taught him. The way Kaori plays the violin is fun and frantic and different from just what's on the score, which gives her the ability to create her own memorable sound, the complete opposite of how Kosei was taught. With Kaori's help and persistence, Kosei slowly changes his way of playing and makes the music his own. Kaori becomes his inspiration, and it's because of her that he's able to return to the instrument that he loves. But as Kaori mentioned, she won't always be there for him. When she first said that, I don't think I understood it the way that she intended, but of course we know what happens with the ending, but I'll get back to that later. The first thing I'd like to talk about Your Lie in April is the amazing first opening, Hikaru Nara by Goose House. I've never heard anything by Goose House before, but damn was I blown away by this opening. It is so catchy and I kept listening to it constantly after finishing Your Lie in April, and it fits so well with the video. I loved it so much that I have to admit I was a little disappointed when it was replaced by the second OP halfway through the series. That's not to say I didn't like the second opening, I did, but it just wasn't the same. Also, the second ending, Orange by Seven, really stood out to me for the emotional element it brought to the anime. It's a beautiful song and still brings me to tears to this day. The overall soundtrack of Your Lie in April is truly a masterpiece. It was just the right music for the story that the anime wanted to tell and really matched the emotion and the drama that occurred. I don't know much about music myself, but this soundtrack is one of my favourites. I also quite enjoyed the pieces that were played by the characters in the piano throughout, though being inexperienced in classical music myself, none of them were particularly memorable to me. The dialogue in Your Lie in April also stood out to me, which isn't common in anime. I'm not talking about the dialogue that was exchanged by the characters, but rather the voice inside Kosei's head. When we hear his inner dialogue, it almost sounds like poetry to me, with metaphors being thrown left and right, and I thought it really added a sense of maturity to his character, and it was just a nice touch to the anime. Your Lie in April's animation style is gorgeous. The scenery is eye-catching, from the blooming cherry blossoms in the spring when the anime first starts to the autumn leaves falling and the snow in winter. The visuals are probably one of the things that make Your Lie in April so great. The characters themselves look great too as well, especially for the fact that they had lips. Weird, I know, but most anime characters don't usually have lips, and Your Lie in April did, which shows how much attention to detail it paid. The use of colour is important to the anime too. At the start, we are given a view of the world through Kosei's eyes, and it's dark and monochrome, giving us a visual representation of how he's feeling. Then, after he meets Kaori, it turns all colourful and bright, which mirrors the change in his life. Tsubaki says something early in the anime which kind of links to this. She says, when you're in love with somebody, everything looks colourful. And the anime puts in the effort to show this, not just tell. Colour is also used to set the mood in a scene very well, using darker shades to tone down the mood and then lighter shades in a light-hearted fun scene. I also really appreciated the use of colour to hint at Kaori's illness, how her skin gets paler and her hair gets a duller shade of blonde, almost like the life is being sucked out of her as her condition worsens throughout the anime. Another thing I want to talk about is the visual symbolism used in Your Lie in April. During the performances, the animation is used to show what the music is trying to convey, which is especially useful to someone like me who can't tell the difference between two people playing the same piece. The audience commentary also helps with this. The symbolism is also used to explain the emotions the characters are feeling while they are playing. The wind-driven leaves, the auburns, reds, and oranges used in Emi's performance, the orbs of light, sunflower field, and cherry blossoms used in Kozei's performance in episode 10. Takeshi's childhood memories of running upstairs to the temple with his sister, like racing to the top, used in his performance. And lastly, in Kozei's final performance, the sky and the light. These show the different ways the characters are playing and gives us an insight into the past, emotions, thoughts, and personalities. Specifically, I really liked how the anime chose to show us the psychological pressure and fear that Kozei was feeling when he first came back to the piano. We see him drowning in a body of water, the water muffling the sound of the piano and pulling him down away from the light at the surface. At the same time, we're also seeing a silhouette of his mum, which reminds us of how much she wanted him to succeed and how much he feared of failing her. I think this really gives us deep insight into Kozei's mind and to what extent his mother's death affected him. Speaking of Kozei's mother, we see her and the relationship in various different ways through the anime, and like Kaori, the progression of her illness. At the start, when Kozei was very young, his mother didn't want to teach him to play the piano, but was urged to by her best friend, Hiroko. She didn't want to teach him because she knew the pressure and she didn't want to place that on Kozei. But then after she gets ill, she starts pushing the piano on him, wanting him to achieve what she couldn't. This, of course, isn't fair in any way to Kozei. He would spend endless days practicing with no playtime and get even beaten if he didn't play the way that his mother wanted him to. And the worst part of it all is that he kept playing without complaining because he thought that if he could play exactly like his mother wanted, she would get better and recover from her illness. That's what's so crushing to me. But in the end, his mother pushes him too hard and he breaks like any child would. I hated seeing how much he suffered and hated his mother for putting him through that. But it goes to show how illness can take control of a person. Obviously, I can't put the blame on the illness, but we did see how much of a loving and adoring parent Kozei's mom was before she got sick. That's the only reason that I forgive her just a little bit. Now, as the show progresses, we learn that Kaori is not well, and this is hinted to us through the clues that are dropped throughout the anime as well. The first of these clues is when she collapses after her and Kozei's performance and ends up in the hospital. However, she says that it's unimportant, that it's the first time she's ever collapsed, blames it on her dad being overdramatic, and chalks it up to her anemia and working too hard before the competition. As the audience, I choose to believe it the first time, but then we get more. The bag full of medicine she carries with her, telling Kozei that she won't always be there for her after he tells her the only reason he was able to play was because he had her. That was a beautiful scene, by the way. And then not showing up to her performance, not picking up the phone, the banisters and railings throughout her house, falling unexpectedly, and then ending up in the hospital again for the last time. Even Kaori's persistent demanding for Kozei to play with her during the beginning of the show, like it's her last chance, which in hindsight we know it was. One thing that I wish Your Lie in April had explored more is the side characters Tsubaki and Watari. We see them a lot, but they're not quite present, if you know what I mean. We do get some good moments with them, like when Watari gives Kozei some surprisingly good advice, or when Tsubaki finally realizes her feelings for Kozei. Tsubaki and Kozei have been friends ever since they were born, so they saw each other as siblings, or rather that's what Tsubaki told herself. She was lying to herself about what Kozei really meant to her, and when she finally realizes, everything starts to change and a love triangle forms between her, Kozei, and Kaori. I myself am not a big fan of love triangles. They're messy and complicated and someone always ends up getting hurt. What made it worse in Your Lie in April is that the triangle was broken by death rather than Kozei choosing one or the other. This makes it harder on Tsubaki and we don't really get closure at the end, which I wish we had. I'd also like to say that I enjoyed the little rivalry between Kozei, Emi, and Takeshi. I found it adorable that it stemmed from when they were children, even though Kozei was totally unaware of it. I really like rivals that inspire one another to push themselves to do better. I've seen some perfect examples of this, such as Hinata and Kageyama in one of my favorite anime, Haikyuu, which utilizes their rivalry, and I think that element added a little more to Your Lie in April. But going back to Kaori, I fell in love with her character from the beginning. She was my obvious favorite. I loved her personality and attitude, how she was always happy and cheerful and positive. Honestly, she's the best, and how she kept pushing Kozei to do his best because she knew it was for his own good. Even though she was sick and she didn't have much time left, she rarely let anyone see that. She was so strong. But she does falter a few times, like when she asks Kozei if he'll be able to forget her, or when she cries into his back as they cycle under the starry sky, or when she also starts to cry when she realizes that she's a violinist who can't even hold her bow. It is these scenes that make the story more realistic though. Kaori's biggest moment of weakness, I'd say though, is that scene on the snowy rooftop with Koze. She finally allows us to see her completely vulnerable with no restrictions. It is then that she shows us that she's scared, lonely, and that she doesn't want to die. Crying in Koze's arms, it really hurts to see her that way, so different than the girl that we used to know. I don't know about you guys, but for me it really hurts to see such a strong character break down. But again, it makes it more real. The last thing about Your Lie in April that I want to talk about, and that I'm sure you've all been waiting for, is the ending. It was not what I expected at all. I had hope. Kaori was having a surgery that could save her life, things were starting to look up, and then they do that to us. They just had to make Kaori die. Kaori's death broke me. I cried so much. It might have not been as bad if they hadn't given us a glimmer of a chance that she would recover, but they did, and that just made it 10 times worse. She shouldn't have died. It was tragic and heartbreaking. But at least they let her die in a sort of positive light. One of my biggest fears was that Kaori's death would affect Koze in the same way that his mother's did, but this time he would never return to the piano. And that almost did happen, but then luckily Koze realizes that he's not alone, and that playing would keep Kaori's memory alive. And so he plays. And that final performance, seeing Kaori and Koze playing together even if it wasn't real, it was just stunning. It hurt, especially when Kaori gave that sad smile as she slowly vanished and we realized that she hadn't made it. And then the last part of the ending, Kaori's letter. I have to say, I sobbed while listening to it. It encapsulated all the various moments and memories throughout the anime, but also gave Koze a proper goodbye, which he deserved. The toughest part to take though was realizing that Kaori never loved Watari and this whole time she had loved Koze. That was her lie in April, get it? If only she had told him. I mean, I know why she didn't, but still. Sorry, Watari, but this whole time Koze thought that Kaori was in love with you, not him, when that wasn't even the case. I know that nothing would have gone the same way, but still, it just adds to the sadness. But there we have it. Overall, Your Lie in April was an amazing emotional rollercoaster of an anime that showed us love, life, and loss in a beautiful way. I loved it so much. It's an anime that I'm sure I'll never forget and I'll keep coming back to. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and please let me know what you thought about Your Lie in April in the comments, and if there are any other anime that you would like me to review. And of course, feel free to like and subscribe. Until next time, bye!